Good morning, everyone. And as we begin our fall semester, throughout the week, we'll be sharing conversations with colleagues across Georgetown. We begin this morning with Eddie Maloney. And Eddie leads our Center for New Designs and Learning and Scholarship, CNDLS, right here at Georgetown. And I wish to thank our entire CNDLS team for their extraordinary work over the course of these past few months. Over the summer, CNDLS held workshops attended by 1,900 members of our faculty as we prepared for the fall semester. So let's begin our conversation with Eddie. So Eddie, when we first began our virtual learning environment in March, you were one of the first people I spoke to as part of our daily conversation series. Could you talk about these past 6 months and the work that has transpired over this time? How do you see this fall semester as different from the spring?
Thanks, President DeGioia. It's great to be here. Great to be back. I'm looking forward to the conversation. I appreciate you chatting with me. So as we know, the spring was an emergency. It was complicated. It was a rush. We were trying to do our best in a really difficult situation. We moved a lot of faculty over, a lot of courses over into a virtual learning environment very, very quickly with a couple of simple principles. Try to keep it simple. Try to, don't worry about doing your best, and be flexible with your students, be compassionate, be understanding. All of those, I think, still apply. But we also knew, as we thought about the fall and where we were going, that we had some time. That we had an opportunity to really try to prepare not only our faculty for what it meant to teach. In what we were thinking about, it was going to be a flexible environment. We didn't know we'd be fully remote, as you know, at the time when we started all of this. So we thought about how important it was to get our faculty prepared for this kind of flexible environment. We also knew it was important to get our students ready to learn in this flexible environment and to start to think about what that meant. And so everything that we put together over the summer was really about preparing our faculty not only to think about how they were going to teach first in a hybrid or flexible environment and then more and more in a remote environment, but what it meant for them to reach out to their students, to connect to their students, to engage with them, to be understanding and transparent with the challenges that they were going to face, both as a teacher and as students in this new environment. And so it's different in the sense that we've had some time to prepare. We know where we are. We've had faculty who've spent the summer. The workshops that you mentioned that faculty went through kind of fall into a couple of different categories. We had some that were small seminars. They were an hour, hour and a half, really trying to focus in on a specific problem or challenge. Those happened in the beginning and they happened in the end. But over the summer, we had over 1,200 faculty who came for really intensive, week-long workshops. These were 3 days over a week where they met each morning. They worked in cohorts, usually based on their departments. They did intense work. It was really incredible to see the commitment that that our faculty had to this work. So it's different also, I think, just in the sense of the level of preparation we have.
Yeah. Now, as you looked ahead to this semester, one of our guiding assumptions was that all of our courses would need to be hybrid and flexible so that we could prepare for in-person and virtual instruction as we navigated the changing conditions of the pandemic and the individual circumstances of our students and faculty. What did it take to prepare for this? Could you talk about some of the workshops and trainings in a little bit more depth about how they were focused on enabling us to address this hybrid flexible character? What were the key topics of conversation among our faculty?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so one of the things that we tried to do early on was think about a set of principles that would apply no matter what environment we found ourselves in. That certainly would work in a hybrid environment or a high flex environment, whatever kind of flexible space, but also would work really well in a remote environment. And I think this is the most important thing, would work when we're all back on campus, right? We want things that are going to be effective now, but that are going to be effective in the spring. They're going to be effective as teachers start to think about how they really think about what's important in their classes and what they're trying to do with their students. So we focused primarily in the course design institutes over the summer on pedagogical principles more than on tools. The stuff in the beginning, our Teaching, Learning, Innovation Summer Institute, some was tool-based also some pedagogical principles. And then the stuff at the end, our digital learning days, really tool-based as well, where people were learning how to use Zoom effectively and Canvas effectively and Panopto or lecture capture. But in the stuff over the summer, where the bulk of our faculty went through these intensive training institutes, we focused in on things like adapting your courses to this new environment. And so the analogy that I often would give is that in the spring, we had to do this rapid translation of our courses that we had been teaching into this new remote environment. And really what we want to do when we think about the fall is adapt our courses to this new environment, to this new remote environment. And that difference between translation and adaptation is kind of like the difference between translating a novel for film or adapting a novel for film. You really need to rethink what you're doing in a new medium. You need to reimagine the course. You need to potentially reimagine your assignments, the structure, potentially even the learning goals, depending on what the new mode will allow you to do. Also talked about being flexible with our students and being flexible with ourselves. It's important to understand that our students are coming in with challenges. They're in different kinds of environments. We know that the playing field is not level for our students when they're at home, and we need to make sure that we are being as flexible as possible. We asked our faculty to be transparent with their students, to make sure that they understood that our students understood that our faculty are trying new things, and that these things are going to work sometimes and they're not going to work other times, and that the more transparency we can give to our students, the more we can be transparent about our expectations, the better we can actually be in helping the students contribute to the learning environment. The other thing that we asked our faculty to think about was really involving our students. And this is also important in this kind of environment that we're in, where students can feel disconnected from the learning experience. And the more that we can involve them in the design of the course, in thinking about how they actually contribute to the carrying out of the course, playing different kinds of roles in the course, the better connected they will actually feel to their learning experience. These are all good pedagogical principles. There's nothing necessarily unique about the remote environment in this space. There are some unique things that we wanted to ask our faculty to pay attention to. Zoom fatigue, for example, trying to make sure that we were getting students off screen, that we weren't doing things that were only synchronous, that we were doing both synchronous and asynchronous environment, taking advantage of the technologies, that we were understanding of some of the challenges that our students faced. So over the summer, we spent a lot of time talking about the student feedback from the spring, the things that they had trouble with, and we tried to adjust in ways that we think were effective in doing so. So some pedagogical principles that really served as kind of foundation for the course design institutes, along with tools and understanding technology.
Sure. Maybe you could take us a little bit deeper, because I know that in addition to what you just described, Candles has created many different kinds of programs to support teaching and learning at Georgetown. Could you tell us a little bit about the emphasis you've had on inclusive pedagogy?
Yeah, another great question. Certainly we know that many challenges that we're facing right now as a society, and I think a search for racial justice and an engagement with anti-racist practices, very much part of how I think we're all thinking as a community and what that means for us as teachers. Candles has long saw inclusive pedagogy as one of the pillars of the work that we do in good pedagogy. Good pedagogy is inclusive pedagogy. Again, whether it's in a remote environment, a hybrid environment, or a fully in-person environment, making sure that our students feel engaged, included, that we understand the challenges that our students face, equity challenges, access challenges, and that runs a spectrum from simple things that have a significant impact, like access to technology, access to the internet, to complications at home and challenges that our students might face, and making sure that faculty are actually reaching out and including and recognizing the importance of understanding inclusive pedagogy as part of their work. And so we have some amazing people in Candles who not only focus in on this work as part of many of our projects, but that work infused everything we did throughout the summer. It became a really key part of how we thought about what was a signature Georgetown experience, not just teaching in a remote environment, but how we would actually try to teach a Georgetown course, a Georgetown learning experience in this environment. And inclusive pedagogy is fundamentally part of that.
Thank you. And back in the spring, you and a colleague at Candles, Joshua Kim, published a piece on 15 fall scenarios, 15 fall scenarios, which you've now turned into an ebook, The Low Density University 15 Scenarios for Higher Education, about approaches universities could take during the pandemic. Candles is a place that has been at the forefront of thinking about how we can continue to deliver our mission as colleges and universities in this new century. Can you talk about how you see this moment in higher education?
Well, it's it's a complex moment, right? I think we all know that what we saw as the normal is changing. Fall 2019 is no longer possible in the same kind of way, and that gives us some openings for rethinking some of the things that we're doing, even as we want to get back to some of the things that we know we did well. So it's certainly, there are overused phrases like it's an inflection point or it's unprecedented, or there may be silver linings where we can really understand and see things differently. And I think all of those things are true. And so one of the things that Josh and I try to pay attention to and try to understand is maybe a few things that are worth just highlighting. One is something I just mentioned, and you know, I think you asked it in the question about inclusive pedagogy. What do we understand about our students differently now than we didn't understand a year ago or 6 months ago? All of us, I think, across higher ed now see our students a little bit differently. We understand their home lives differently. We understand the challenges that they face. We understand the issues of equity and access in a different kind of light, in ways that at many institutions might have been part of sort of an area of the institution, but not necessarily seen across all of the teaching and learning space. And that's changed, and I think that's a good thing. I think recognizing who our students are and where our students are, it's a Jesuit principle. We want to meet our students where they are. And this is certainly, I think, now part of how we think about this kind of changing landscape that we're in. The fact that we have faculty across higher ed who've been thinking differently about their teaching, I think, can do nothing but make our teaching better. I think across higher ed, we'll start to see that investment pay off, not only in the online space or the remote space, but the in-person space as well. And I think that that's exciting as well. And we understand more about the challenges of doing this now in a much more complex way than we ever have. So I think we're trying to use in the degree program that I direct, graduate program that I direct, the word opening rather than opportunities. There's some openings for understanding where we are, openings for trying to understand how higher ed will be different, but that those openings allow us to do things in ways that can be just as deep, just as rich, and still get us back to the things that we value and that we care about so much in a residential education.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, as part of our layered public health framework, we have worked on a campaign to encourage everyone in our community to follow important public health protocols to help keep our community safe. We call it Every Hoya Everywhere. What does Every Hoya Everywhere mean to you? How do you see your role to keep our community safe?
Oh, that's a great one. A great question too. I think part of my challenge and part of the challenge of Candles, and then part of the challenge of Georgetown, as we think about where we're going and what we're doing, is how we connect with our students, how we stay engaged as a community. This is, I think, certainly hard to think about not having all of our students on campus and the public health challenges that raise, and what it means for us to make that transition back to bringing our students back to campus, bringing our faculty back to campus, to bringing the campus back to a kind of lively research and scholarly and pedagogically informed space that we all love. Trying to imagine how we're going to do that in a way that is both responsive to the public health challenges that we face, but also pedagogically informed, that is meaningfully informed by the work that we've been learning about over the past 6 months, and for Candles for the past 20 plus years, I think is really important, and it's what is front and center for me. And when I think about that, Hoya's Everywhere, what it means for us to do that work is very much about trying to imagine that transition back, even as we stay connected with our students across the globe right now, and creating the best possible Georgetown experience in that space.
Thank you. Well, I'm deeply grateful to you for taking this time to join us this morning. Is there one closing thought that you'd like to leave with our community as we begin this fall semester?
Thank you. I have a lot of gratitude for our faculty who've taken on this work. I have a lot of gratitude for my staff who worked in ways that I'm humbled by. I think the amount of work that went into trying to get us ready for the fall is impressive, and it is certainly humbling. And so I feel very grateful that we're at a place where in an institution that cares about its students in the way that it does, that cares about its community in the way that it does, and that it was willing to do this work. I've told people elsewhere, I know of no other institution that has been able to do this level of work, this engagement with its faculty, have this many faculty show up for this amount of work. So I have a lot of gratitude, and I hope it's going well, and I look forward to hearing both the positives and the negatives so we can continue to adjust.
Thank you. I wish to express my appreciation to Eddie Maloney, the Executive Director of Candles, our Center for New Designs in Learning and Scholarship, for joining us this morning. I look forward to being with you all again tomorrow for our next interview. Take care of yourselves and take care of everyone around you. For every Hoya, everywhere.